I'll tell you this much: as a minority dude on here who's a fan of Lord of the Rings and a lot of stuff, this is a message to you, Hollywood. Stop fucking doing this shit. All right, stop it. Because as a
Get him, Mike.
minority, you know what this makes me feel like? This makes me feel like fucking shit, you mother effers. It makes me feel like fucking shit. You think you're doing this for
Tell
me?
him.
You're not doing this for me. You're not doing this for me. You're not doing this for my other ethnic friends, whether they're black, brown, Asian, or whatever. You know what you're doing? You're being condescending as fuck. And you know what you're doing? You're taking all the damn ass joy out of this first book that I read when I was a little kid, and it made me feel smart and excited as a fan because it made me excited. I wouldn't have never even double majored in English literature at Stanford if it wasn't for this first book that I read from Tolkien. So F you, Hollywood. Stop fucking with my shit and stop thinking that you're doing me any effing favors, because you're not.
Middle Earth changed my life. I was in the 4th grade, read The Hobbit. I literally read that book in 2 days because I was inside that world. When you know about Middle Earth lore, you know that Tolkien described the dwarf women as looking just like the men. You couldn't tell between the man dwarves and the women dwarves. And you know our hardcore Lord of the Rings, Middle Earth, J.R.R. Tolkien fans know this. And the thing about the dwarven culture, that is a Nordic type of thing with dwarves. That's where it comes from, in that European portion of the world. They're white, pretty much saying that, man. You've never seen black dwarves before, so bro, you destroying it, man. I'm looking at this first look. You have already destroyed what J.R.R. Tolkien stood for, man. And let's get to the Elven brothers. We got better looks of the Elven brother, man. He got a fade like me, bro. He got a fade. Why do an elf got a fade like me? That doesn't take me into the Middle Earth world. I would have been fine if we had black people as human, as mankind, but not as dwarves, not as elves. I could have took them being mankind, human beings in the Middle Earth universe. Even Numenorians, I could have took that. But dwarves and elves, these people, these race of beings had specific descriptions that J.R.R. Tolkien gave us. Period, point blank. He told her how this race looked, how that race looked. And I'm sorry, ladies and gentlemen out there, and people out who want to be political correct, and this is coming from a black man himself who loved J.R.R. Tolkien and also loved everybody out there. Look, Middle Earth did not have people of color in it. I think this show is going to be absolute garbage, and it's going to be a disgrace to J.R.R. Tolkien. I love everything about the Tolkien Middle Earth universe, and Amazon is going to destroy that.
Don't do it, Amazon. Keep it the way it was intended. It's good where it is. You spent the money on it. The production value, I'm sure, is high. Tell the stories with respect and fidelity to what Tolkien intended. My first concern here is that they will update this story to try and make it appealing to where we are presently. And what that means is putting elements in this story that were not part of Tolkien's original intention. And this is going to bother me. As someone who is a Tolkien fan of the books as well as the movie, I expect to see what Tolkien meant for us to see from this work, and not an infusion of a whole bunch of stuff that's not reflective of what he was trying to do in bringing us the story.
I'll show you yet again. I'm not going to spend all the time in the world. But yes, I've seen people mocking, shaming, as they should be, all over Twitter. Definitely a lot of our colleagues. Some of them already knew that this is dead on arrival. But you're seeing this questionable stuff happening regards to these elves. You know what's in mind. You know what they're keeping in mind when they make this shit. It's not a secret. The creators, producers, writers, actors, actresses, everybody that's part of the project has no desire to honor any of that stuff. That a lot of that stuff that you guys care about, right? About the lore of it all, the canon. You talking about Tolkien? Like, you guys care about that stuff. They don't. They don't care at all. But you even look at like some of these awards that these guys like strive for, and the fact that a lot of these movies and shit can't even be considered, like the BAFTA awards and shit. You can't even be considered nominee or not be nominated unless you had this particular makeup of weird. None of that's based on merit. And because if you don't base your hiring practice upon merit, then this is exactly what you get. You get a bunch of dog shit. It may be highly produced dog shit, but dog shit nonetheless.
According to a BBC interview with actor Lindsay Henry, he's going to play a black hobbit, and the hobbits are going to be multicultural. Quote, I'm a Harfoot because J.R.R. Tolkien, who was from Birmingham, suddenly there were hobbits. I'm a black hobbit. It's brilliant. It's also wrong. Hobbits aren't black. There's nothing in the text that describes any of them as looking African. Nothing. I've said this several times, and I'll keep saying it until it sinks in. Middle-earth is based on English, Celtic, and Norse folklore and mythology. Tolkien told the stories as a way of replacing the English mythology lost after the Norman invasion. Last time I checked, the native peoples of England aren't black or brown. They're very Caucasian, and any of the characters in the books from the lands of Beleriand or Eriador, which are pretty much everyone in the cast, would look Caucasian. So damn near all the actors should be white or pass for white. Now, the obvious thing people do is take the phrase of the Harfoots being browner of skin to mean they were literally brown-skinned. But as I pointed out many times, Tolkien was a linguist, and he was very particular about words. If he meant to say that they had brown skin like someone of African or Indian descent, he would have said that. But he didn't. He said they were browner than the other hobbits, meaning they otherwise looked like the other hobbits. The idea that the hobbits would be black makes zero sense. It completely breaks the lore, particularly since the Harfoots are also the most common type of hobbits. And the only hobbit Tolkien regularly mentions as having brown skin is Samwise Gamgee. However, Sam is a gardener, so it's possible he's brown because he's tanned. At no point does Tolkien suggest that the hobbits in general have brown skin associated with African people, and if he did, he would have made note of it, just like he made note of Sam and Rosie's kids Eleanor and Goldilocks having fair or light blonde hair, which was unusual for hobbits. It makes even less sense when you consider that in Lord of the Rings, characters make note that the hobbits would appear to be children to men's eyes, implying that they look like the men from Bree, the Rohirrim, the Gondorians, who we know were white. This nonsense touches on one of my main problems with this show. Amazon doesn't seem to want to tell a Middle-earth story. They don't seem interested in the lore at all, let alone respecting it. It seems like they just want to tell a woke fantasy story, but there are no woke fantasy franchises that are popular, so they decided to use something people know, Lord of the Rings, call the show that even though it has nothing at all to do with Lord of the Rings, and then just ignore Tolkien's words and write whatever they want. Why don't you just make up your own fantasy world? That way you can have your representation, and it'll actually work because it's built into the lore. Speaking of stupidity, Henry also said this, quote, and what's notable about this run of the book, it's a prequel to the age that we've seen in the films and in the books. It's about the early days of the Shire and Tolkien's environment. No it's not. The Akalabeth takes place in the 3rd millennium of the Second Age. The Shire doesn't even exist yet because the hobbits aren't in Eriador. The hobbits literally have nothing to do with the Second Age, and as far as we know, the only men who even knew of them were the Eotheod, the ancestors to the Rohirrim, and this may have happened sometime in the 1800s of the Third Age, nearly 2,000 years after the fall of Numenor. I'm sure Tom Shippey explained all of this much better than I did. Maybe someone should have listened to him. Let's look at the map again. The section at the bottom, Harad, that's where the black people would be from. The section to the right, Rhûn, further east of that is where the Asian people would come from. As you can see, Harad and Rhûn are several hundred, if not 1,000 miles away from the Anduin. So, how in the ever-shining Elbereth could the hobbits be multiracial? Tolkien tells us that outside of the Fallowhides, hobbits don't like to move around and they don't like adventure. Once they get to a place, they stay there. In order for them to be so racially divergent, they would have had to have traveled a lot of different places, and all those groups would not only have to move together, but somehow never intermingle their bloodlines. But we know that doesn't happen. The Fallowhides intermingled with the Stores and the Harfoots, effectively erasing their ethnic group, although you see shades of them in the Tooks and the Brandybucks. So if there were all these different races of hobbits, they would have intermingled quickly in order for them to get near the Anduin and be as homogeneous and settled as Tolkien described. Henry, let's be honest. You have no idea what you're talking about, do you? Everything they need should be in the text, unless they're just going to make things up that are inconsistent with the lore, like, quote, and there's a strong female presence in this. There are going to be female heroes in this evocation of the story, and there are going to be little people as well. Yeah, we all know who the important players were in the Second Age. The Silmarillion is about those people, and fewer of them are women. So Amazon is going to change the lore to make it about heroines, even though that's not what happens in the book. Right. Everything that diverges seems a little off. The less it diverges, the less it presents a problem. But when it's something brand new, it usually doesn't work at all. It breaks the lore and looks out of place, and I have a feeling that's what's going to happen with the show. Amazon's The Lord of the Rings is going to be the new Star Trek Discovery.